the first time Zara Sullivan saw blood on the ivory keys. She knew her life in Julesburg, Colorado, had reached a turning point that no amount of careful living could prevent. It was August of 1878, and the dusty streets of this small railroad town still held the scent of cattle and broken promises. Zara had arrived 3 months earlier with nothing but a worn carpetbag, a letter of introduction to the owner of the Silverthorne Saloon, and fingers that could coax magic from any piano they touched. She was 22 years old, though most days she felt decades older, her youth having been spent caring for her dying mother in St. Louis, before tuberculosis finally claimed the woman who had once been the finest pianist in Missouri. The Silverthorne was not much to look at from the outside, its weathered boards gray with age and neglect, but inside it held a treasure that had drawn Zara across half the country. A Steinway grand piano, shipped from New York at tremendous expense by the saloon's previous owner, who had died before he could hear a single note played upon it. The current owner, a pragmatic woman named Martha Hayes, who had won the establishment in a card game, had no use for such an instrument but recognized that it might draw a better class of customer than the usual drifters and ranch hands. What Martha had not anticipated was that the piano would mostly gather dust, played only by Zara in an increasingly empty room. The rougher elements who frequented the Silverthorne had no patience for Chopin or Mozart, and the respectable folks of Julesburg did their drinking at home or at the hotel restaurant. So Zara played to silence, her music echoing through the empty space, filling it with something that felt like prayer or grief or both. The blood had come from a fight that spilled in from the street, 2 men arguing over a card game at another establishment. One had stumbled against the piano, his split knuckles leaving crimson marks on the white keys before his friend dragged him back outside. Zara had stared at those marks for a long moment, thinking about how easily beauty could be stained, how violence seeped into everything in this hard country. She was cleaning the keys with a damp cloth when she heard the door open. Without looking up, she called out, "We are not open yet. Come back at sunset." "I am not here to drink." The voice was deep, rough-edged, but somehow gentle, like wind over stone. Zara turned and found herself looking at a man who seemed to embody everything she had learned about the West in her short time here. He was tall, probably in his middle 20s, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that needed cutting. Dust covered his clothes, the worn denim and leather of someone who spent more time on horseback than on foot. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, gray as storm clouds, holding an expression she recognized because she had seen it in her own mirror. Loneliness. "Then what are you here for?" she asked, setting down the cloth. "I heard you playing yesterday," he said, removing his hat. "I was riding past at sunset. I have not heard music like that since, well, in a very long time. I wondered if you might play again." "I play every evening," Zara said. "Though I cannot promise the surroundings will be pleasant. This is a saloon, after all." "I do not need pleasant surroundings," he replied. "Just the music." He did not introduce himself, and Zara did not ask. He simply took a seat at a corner table, the one farthest from the door and closest to the piano, and waited. When she began to play an hour later, as the sun painted the dusty windows gold, he listened with an intensity that was almost palpable. He did not drink, did not speak, just sat with his hands resting on the table and his eyes closed, absorbing every note. This became their routine. Every evening as the sun began its descent, the cowboy would arrive, taking the same corner table. He never ordered anything stronger than coffee, much to Martha's displeasure, but Zara found his presence strangely comforting. She played better knowing someone was actually listening, someone who seemed to understand what she was trying to say with each melody. A week passed this way before curiosity got the better of her. She finished a piece by Brahms, then turned on the piano bench to face him directly. "You never tell me what you want to hear," she said. "Do you have any requests?" He opened his eyes, and she saw something flicker across his face. "Play whatever brings you peace," he said. "That is all I ask." "Nothing brings me peace," Zara admitted, surprising herself with the honesty, "but the piano helps me forget for a while." "Yes," he said simply. "That is why I come." The next evening, he brought her coffee, prepared the way she liked it, which he must have noticed from watching her during her break. It was a small gesture, but it touched something in Zara's heart that had been frozen for longer than she cared to admit. She thanked him, and when she played that night, she chose pieces that felt like gratitude, like the beginning of something she could not yet name. On the 10th evening, Martha cornered Zara before she began playing. "That cowboy," she said, wiping down the bar. "His name is Ryder Morrison. He works the Thompson Ranch, breaking horses mostly. Good man from what I hear, but keeps to himself. Lost his whole family to fever 4 years back. Parents, 2 sisters, younger brother. He was away driving cattle to market when it happened. Came home to find them all dead and buried." The information settled over Zara like a weight. She understood now, that look in his eyes. He was not just lonely but hollowed out by grief, by guilt, by all the things left unsaid to people who were gone. When she played that evening, she chose pieces that spoke of sorrow and survival, and when she glanced at Ryder Morrison, she saw tears tracking silently down his weathered cheeks. After the last customer left that night, Ryder remained. Zara played softly in the lamplight, and when she finally stopped, he spoke into the quiet. "My mother played piano," he said. "Not as well as you, but she loved it. She would play in the evenings and we would all gather around. It was the best part of every day." "I am sorry for your loss," Zara said, meaning it deeply. "I am sorry for whatever loss brought you here," he replied. "I can hear it in your music. You are running from something too." "Not running," Zara corrected. "There is just nothing left to stay for." They sat in comfortable silence for a long moment before Ryder stood, placed a silver dollar on the piano and left. Zara picked up the coin, feeling its weight, understanding it for what it was. Not payment, but tribute, recognition from one wounded soul to another. As summer faded into autumn, their silent communion deepened. Ryder began to arrive earlier, helping Martha move barrels and fix broken chairs, making himself useful in ways that earned the older woman's approval. Other customers came and went, but Zara played primarily for him, choosing pieces that told stories without words. He, in turn, began to share small pieces of his life. How his youngest sister had loved butterflies, how his brother had dreamed of becoming a doctor, how his father had built their ranch house with his own hands. Zara shared her own stories in return. Her mother's final days, the way the music had been the only thing that could ease her pain. The empty house in St. Louis she had sold for far less than it was worth, desperate to escape memories that pressed against her like physical weight. The fear she carried that she was just drifting, that this town was just another temporary stopping point in a life without direction. "You are not drifting," Ryder said one night in early October when frost had begun to silver the morning grass. "You are here, that is something." "Is it enough?" Zara asked. "I do not know," he admitted, "but it is more than I had a month ago." The evening that changed everything came in late October. Zara arrived at the Silverthorn to find Martha in a state of unusual agitation. "The circuit judge is in town," she explained. "That means every drunk and troublemaker will be out tonight, either celebrating or drowning their sorrows. It might get rough. I can pay you extra if you stay, but I will understand if you would rather go home. Zara thought about her small room above the general store, cold and empty. She thought about Ryder, who would come expecting music and find only silence. I will stay, she said. The evening started quietly enough, but as Martha had predicted, the crowd grew rowdy as the night progressed. Men drank hard, their voices rising in argument over everything from cattle prices to politics to women. Zara kept playing, using the music to create a bubble of calm around herself, but she could feel the tension building like pressure before a storm. Ryder arrived later than usual, and she saw immediately that something was wrong. His jaw was set tight, and there was anger in his eyes, though it softened when he looked at her. He took his usual table, but his posture remained tense, watchful. The trouble came from a group of men Zara had never seen before, drifters passing through town. They had been drinking since afternoon, their words slurred and mean. One of them, a massive man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, began to make crude comments about Zara, his voice carrying over her playing. Martha moved to intercept, but the man waved her off. I am just appreciating the entertainment, he said, his grin ugly. Pretty little thing like that wasted on a piano. Should be putting those fingers to better use. Zara kept playing, face burning, trying to ignore him. She had dealt with such men before, knew that any reaction would only encourage them, but Ryder was already standing. You will apologize to the lady, he said, his voice carrying despite its quietness. The big man laughed. Or what, Cowboy, you going to make me? If I have to, Ryder said simply. What happened next occurred too fast for Zara to fully process. The big man lunged at Ryder, who sidestepped smoothly, letting the drunk's momentum carry him into a table. The man's friends jumped up, but so did several other patrons, including 2 ranch hands who worked with Ryder. Martha was shouting for everyone to calm down, but the fight spread like wildfire. Zara stood frozen at the piano until Ryder was suddenly there, his hand on her arm. We need to go, he said urgently. Now. She did not argue, just let him guide her toward the back door as chairs flew and men grappled. They burst into the cool night air, and Ryder pulled her away from the building, down the alley toward the quieter end of town. Are you hurt? He asked, his hands gentle on her shoulders as he examined her face in the moonlight. No, Zara managed, but you, that man was twice your size. Size does not matter as much as you might think, Ryder said. Besides, I could not let him speak to you that way. You could have been seriously hurt, Zara said, and was shocked to feel tears on her cheeks. Over words, meaningless words from a drunk. Not meaningless, Ryder said softly. He reached up, wiping away her tears with his thumb. Not when they are about you. The moment stretched between them, charged with everything they had been building toward these past months. Zara could hear her heart pounding, could see the question in Ryder's eyes. She answered it by rising on her toes and kissing him, gentle and tentative and absolutely sure. He responded with care, his hands cradling her face as though she were something precious. The kiss tasted of coffee and hope and all the words they had not yet said. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I have wanted to do that for weeks, Ryder admitted. Why did you not? Zara asked. Because you deserve better than a broken-down cowboy with nothing to offer but a borrowed horse and grief, he said. I am fairly broken myself, Zara pointed out. Maybe that means we fit together. They walked through the quiet streets, hands intertwined, talking in a way they never had before. Ryder told her about the Thompson Ranch, the horses he trained, his small cabin on the property that the owner let him use in exchange for extra work. Zara talked about her dreams of opening a music school someday, teaching children the way her mother had taught her, creating something beautiful and lasting. "Stay in Julesburg," Ryder said as they reached the general store where Zara rented her room. "Please. I know it is not much of a town, and the Silverthorn is not where someone with your talent should be playing, but stay. Give us a chance to see what this might become." "I was not planning to leave," Zara said. "Not anymore." They kissed again under the stars, and Zara felt something inside her chest that had been clenched tight for years finally begin to relax. She was not healed, not completely, but she was beginning to believe that healing might be possible. The next day brought consequences from the fight. The Silverthorn had sustained significant damage, including a cracked leg on the piano that made it unusable. Martha was furious, threatening to close the place entirely. The big man who had started the trouble was in jail, along with 2 others, awaiting the judge's sentencing. Zara visited the saloon to find Martha surveying the wreckage with disgust. "I am too old for this," the woman said. "Maybe it is time to sell, move somewhere quieter." "What about the piano?" Zara asked, looking at the wounded instrument. "A piano maker in Denver might be able to fix it," Martha said. "But the shipping alone would cost more than this place makes in a month." "I am sorry, Zara. I know how much it meant to you." Ryder found Zara sitting on the steps of the general store that afternoon, staring at nothing. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I heard about the piano," he said. "It seems like the universe is telling me something," Zara said, "that even the beautiful things are temporary, that nothing lasts." "Or maybe it is telling you that the piano was never what mattered," Ryder suggested. "Maybe what matters is why you played it, and that does not go away just because the instrument is broken." "What am I supposed to do now?" Zara asked. "Whatever you want," Ryder said. "But I hope some of those plans include me." Despite her sadness, Zara found herself smiling. "They do," she said. "Though I have no idea what shape they should take." Over the next few weeks, those plans began to take form in unexpected ways. The town's schoolteacher, a stern woman named Mrs. Patterson, approached Zara about giving piano lessons to some of the local children. There was an old upright piano in the schoolhouse, she explained, donated years ago but rarely used because no one in town could play well enough to teach. Zara agreed immediately and found herself with 3 students by the end of the week. 2 young girls, sisters aged 8 and 10, and a shy 12-year-old boy whose mother desperately wanted him to have some refinement. Teaching brought Zara a joy she had not anticipated, the satisfaction of passing on her mother's gift to a new generation. Ryder continued to court her with quiet determination. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie, taught her to ride so they could take evening excursions into the countryside, shared his meals with her in his small cabin. The Thompson family, who owned the ranch where Ryder worked, welcomed Zara warmly, inviting her to Sunday dinners and treating her as though she already belonged. Winter arrived, harsh and beautiful, blanketing Julesburg in snow. The Silverthorn remained closed, Martha having decided to sell the building to a merchant who wanted to expand his dry goods business. The piano, still unrepaired, sat in storage. On Christmas Eve, Ryder took Zara to his cabin and presented her with a small wrapped package. Inside was a silver locket, engraved with a delicate treble clef. "Open it," he said softly. She did, and found a tiny photograph of herself, taken by the traveling photographer who had passed through town in November. On the other side was a photograph of Ryder. "So we are always together," he explained. "Even when we are apart." "Ryder, this is beautiful," Zara said, tears pricking her eyes. "But I did not get you anything nearly this fine." "You gave me back music," Ryder said. "You gave me a reason to feel again. That is worth more than anything I could buy." They kissed in the firelight, and Zara knew with absolute certainty that she loved this man, this gentle cowboy who had sat alone in an empty saloon just to hear her play. "Marry me," Ryder said, the words sudden but feeling inevitable. "I know I do not have much. The cabin belongs to the Thompsons. I have saved some money, but not enough for a grand house or fancy things. But I will work every day for the rest of my life to make you happy, to build a life where you can make music and teach and be everything you are meant to be. Marry me, Zara Sullivan, please." "Yes," Zara said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, of course, yes." They were married in February of 1879 in the small church at the center of Julesburg. Mrs. Patterson played the church's organ, and Zara's 3 students scattered rose petals. Martha attended, having delayed her departure from town just to see the wedding. The Thompsons came, along with most of the ranch hands and half the town. It was simple and perfect, and when Ryder kissed his bride, Zara felt as though every painful step that had led her to this dusty Colorado town had been worth it. The Thompsons gave them a wedding present that left both newlyweds speechless. Mr. Thompson, a gruff man in his 60s who nevertheless had a soft heart, handed Ryder a deed. "That 40 acres on the eastern edge of the property," he said. "Been meaning to sell it off anyway, too far for us to manage properly. Figure you two could build something there, make it yours." "Sir, we cannot possibly afford to buy land," Ryder protested. "Not asking you to buy it," Mr. Thompson said. "You have worked for me for 4 years, never asked for more than basic wages, never caused a lick of trouble. You have earned it, son. Build yourselves a home." Zara embraced the old rancher impulsively, making him blush and pat her back awkwardly. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much." Building a house while living in Ryder's small cabin and working their respective jobs was challenging, but they tackled it together. Ryder did most of the construction himself with help from other ranch hands on their days off. Zara continued teaching and began taking in sewing work to add to their savings. By summer, they had a simple but sturdy 2-room house with a porch that faced the sunrise. The surprise came in August on their 6-month anniversary, when Ryder led Zara outside to find a wagon stopped in front of their new home. In the back, carefully secured and wrapped in blankets, was the Steinway from the Silverthorne. "How did you?" Zara could not finish the question, too overcome with emotion. "I bought it from Martha before she left town," Ryder explained. "Had it sent to Denver to be repaired, which took longer than I expected, but it is here now. Yours, ours. The cost," Zara managed. "Ryder, we are trying to save money to build a life." "This is part of our life," Ryder said firmly. "Your music is not some luxury we can afford to do without. It is part of who you are. I want to hear you play every day for the rest of our lives. I want our children to grow up with that music filling our home, the way I grew up with my mother's playing. This matters, Zara. It matters." They moved the piano into the main room, which suddenly felt like a real home with the beautiful instrument gracing it. That evening, as the sun set over the prairie, Zara played for her husband. She played the pieces she had performed in the empty saloon, but they sounded different now. Not lonely, but full, each note carrying hope instead of grief. Life settled into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Zara taught her students, who had grown to 7 by autumn. Ryder worked with the horses, his skill earning him a reputation that brought buyers from as far away as Kansas. They built a barn, acquired chickens and a milk cow, planted a garden that Zara tended with surprising enthusiasm. In December, Zara told Ryder she was pregnant. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around until she laughingly demanded he put her down. That night, he held her close and whispered plans for the future. They would need to expand the house, add rooms for children. Maybe build a proper music school in town if Zara wanted. Whatever she dreamed, he would help make real. Their son was born in July of 1880, during a thunderstorm that seemed to shake the foundations of their small house. Ryder paced frantically while the midwife worked, and when he finally heard the baby's cry, he nearly collapsed with relief. They named him Samuel Thomas Morrison, after both of their fathers, men neither had gotten to know as well as they wished. Holding her son while Ryder sat beside the bed, his hand gentle on the baby's tiny head, Zara felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. She thought about the woman she had been 2 years ago, playing piano in an empty saloon, convinced her life would always be defined by loss. She could never have predicted this happiness, this sense of belonging. "Thank you," she told Ryder. "For what?" he asked, looking up from his absorbed study of their son's face. "For sitting alone in that saloon," Zara said. "For listening. For seeing me when I felt invisible." "I could say the same," Ryder replied. "You gave me back something I thought was dead. You taught me I could feel joy again." Motherhood transformed Zara in ways she had not expected. She reduced her teaching schedule but continued working with a few dedicated students. The piano became part of Samuel's daily life, its music his lullaby and his entertainment. By the time he was a year old, he would crawl to the piano and pull himself up, banging on the keys with delighted enthusiasm. The town of Julesburg continued to grow around them. The railroad brought more people, more opportunities. A proper school was built, and the church expanded. Zara was approached about starting a formal music program, which she did when Samuel turned 2, teaching 3 afternoons a week in a room at the new school building. In 1882, their daughter arrived, born on a clear spring morning with none of the drama of her brother's entrance. They named her Rose Ryder Morrison, after Ryder's youngest sister and Zara's mother. She had her father's gray eyes and her mother's musical sensitivity, crying whenever the house was too quiet and calming instantly when Zara played. Life was not without struggles. There were hard winters when money was tight, summers when drought threatened their garden, illnesses that kept Zara up all night with sick children. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from the love they had built. On their 5th anniversary, Ryder surprised Zara with a trip to Denver. They left the children with the Thompsons and took the train to the city, where Ryder had arranged for them to attend a concert at the Opera House. Zara sat in the red velvet seat, holding her husband's hand, listening to a full orchestra perform Beethoven, and felt grateful beyond words for the unexpected path her life had taken. "You ever miss it?" Ryder asked during the intermission. "Performing, being in a place like this?" Zara considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss the feeling of sharing music with a large audience," she admitted, "but I would not trade what I have for anything. Every time I teach a student, every time I play for our children, I am sharing what I love. That is enough, more than enough." By 1885, their home had expanded to 5 rooms, and Zara was teaching nearly 20 students. Samuel, now 5, showed remarkable aptitude for the piano, his small fingers already learning proper technique. Rose, 3 years old, preferred singing, her clear voice ringing through the house at all hours. The music school Zara had dreamed of became reality when a local businessman donated space in one of his buildings. Zara hired 2 other teachers, women she had trained herself, and suddenly Julesburg had something unusual for a small western town: a genuine music conservatory. It was modest compared to what existed in St. Louis or Denver, but it was real, and it was hers. Ryder continued working with horses, but had expanded into breeding, partnering with Mr. Thompson to develop a line of working horses suited to the harsh Colorado climate. His reputation drew buyers from across the region, providing financial stability that allowed them to help others in turn. They donated to the church, helped fund the new library, quietly paid medical bills for families who could not afford them. In 1887, Zara received a letter that made her sit down suddenly at the kitchen table. It was from a music academy in St. Louis, one she had auditioned for years ago, before her mother's illness. They were offering her a teaching position with a generous salary and the opportunity to perform regularly. She showed the letter to Ryder that evening after the children were asleep. He read it carefully, then looked at her with understanding in his eyes. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to stay here," Zara said without hesitation. "This is our home. Our life is here. I am not that girl anymore, the one who thought she needed to be in a big city to matter." "You could still go," Ryder said gently. "We could all go. I could find work there. We could start over." "I do not want to start over," Zara said firmly. "I like what we have built. I love teaching my students here, seeing children who might never have had the chance to learn music discovering that they have talent. I love our home, our friends, this town. I love the life we have made. Do you want to leave?" "Not even a little bit," Ryder admitted, relief clear in his voice. "But I would have for you. I meant what I said on our wedding day. Your happiness is what matters most." "Then we are staying," Zara said, and wrote a polite refusal letter the next morning. As their 10th anniversary approached, Zara sometimes found herself reflecting on the unlikely journey that had brought her to this point. She thought about the woman she had been, playing piano in a dusty, empty saloon, certain that loneliness was her permanent condition. She thought about Ryder, the cowboy who had sat alone just to hear her music, equally convinced that joy was behind him. They had found each other in their brokenness, and somehow built something whole. Their love was not dramatic or flashy, but it was deep and steady, a foundation that everything else in their lives was built upon. They had created a family, a home, a community of music students and friends who filled their days with purpose and meaning. Samuel, now nearly 8, was becoming a skilled pianist in his own right, his playing showing hints of the passion that had driven his mother. Rose, 6 years old, sang in the church choir and had announced her intention to perform on stage someday. In early 1889, Zara discovered she was pregnant again. A surprise, but a welcome one. Their 3rd child, a daughter they named Ryder Morrison, arrived that September. She was smaller than her siblings had been, and the birth was difficult, leaving Zara weak for weeks afterward. Ryder took over most of the household duties, caring for all 3 children while Zara recovered. It was during this time that she truly understood the depth of his commitment to their family, watching him manage everything with patience and love. By Lily's 1st birthday, Zara had fully recovered and expanded her teaching schedule again. The music school continued to thrive, attracting students from neighboring towns. Some of her early students were now old enough to teach themselves, creating a generation of musicians spreading across northeastern Colorado. The piano that had once sat in a dusty saloon now held pride of place in their living room, its keys worn smooth by constant use. Zara played it every day, sometimes formal pieces for practice, sometimes improvised melodies while children played at her feet. The music that had once been her refuge from pain had transformed into her expression of joy. In 1892, the town of Julesburg celebrated its 25th anniversary, and Zara was asked to organize a concert. She worked for months, training a choir, preparing her advanced students for solos, even convincing Ryder to sing, which he did with shy reluctance. The concert was held in the new town hall, every seat filled, people standing in the back. As Zara played the final piece, a complex arrangement of American folk songs she had spent weeks perfecting. She looked out at the audience. She saw her husband, beaming with pride. Her children, sitting with the Thompsons, Sam and Rose watching intently, baby Lily asleep despite the music. She saw her students, her friends, the entire community that had become her family. After the concert, an elderly woman approached Zara with tears in her eyes. "I grew up in Boston," she said. "I have heard concerts in the finest halls, but I have never heard anything more beautiful than what you have built here. You have given this town something precious. Thank you." That night, lying in bed beside Ryder, Zara said, "I think I finally understand why my mother loved teaching so much. It is not about the performance or the recognition. It is about passing something on, creating something that will outlast you." "You have done that," Ryder said. "These children you have taught, they will teach others someday. The music will continue." "Like our children," Zara said. "They will have children, and those children will have children, and some part of us will continue through all of them." "That is a good legacy," Ryder agreed. As the years continued, their lives evolved but remained rooted in the same core values of family, community, and music. Samuel graduated from the music school at 15 and shocked everyone by announcing he wanted to be a rancher, not a musician. Zara was disappointed for perhaps a day before realizing that she had given him the choice, which was what mattered. He worked alongside his father, learning horse breeding and training, though he still played piano for pleasure. Rose pursued her dream of performance, traveling to Denver at 18 to study at a proper conservatory. Zara and Ryder visited her often, bursting with pride at her progress. Lily, quieter than her siblings, showed interest in composition, filling notebooks with original melodies by the time she was 12. In 1899, as the century drew to a close, Zara and Ryder celebrated their 20th anniversary with a party that filled their expanded home and spilled out into the yard. Looking around at the crowd, Zara marveled at how rich their lives had become. Friends, family, students past and present, colleagues, neighbors. They had built something lasting. Late in the evening, when most guests had departed, Ryder led Zara to the piano. "Play something," he said, "like you did that first night in the saloon." Zara settled onto the familiar bench and let her fingers find the keys. She played the same Brahms piece she had been working on that evening 21 years ago, when a lonely cowboy had walked through the door and changed everything. But the music sounded different now, infused with 2 decades of love and life and growth. When she finished, Ryder wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Zara asked, though she knew. "For saying yes when I asked you to stay," he said. "For building this life with me, for every moment of these 20 years. "I should thank you," Zara replied. "You saved me that night in the saloon. I was drowning in grief, and your presence, your listening, it reminded me that beauty still existed. That connection was still possible." "We saved each other," Ryder said simply. They stood together in the quiet house, the piano silent now, but its music still echoing in the walls, in the memories held by these rooms. Outside, the Colorado prairie stretched into darkness, the same landscape that had witnessed their courtship, their struggles, their triumphs. The new century brought changes to Julesburg and to the Morrison family. The town continued modernizing, electricity arriving in 1901, automobiles appearing on streets that had once known only horses. Zara adapted her teaching methods, incorporating new composers and styles, always evolving. Samuel married a local girl in 1902, a school teacher named Margaret, and they built a home on Thompson land adjacent to Ryder and Zara's property. Their first child, A son they named Ryder Morrison arrived in 1903, making Zara and Ryder grandparents. Holding her grandson, Zara wept with joy, thinking about continuity, about how love and family persisted through generations. Rose returned from Denver in 1904 with a husband, a violinist she had met at the conservatory. They settled in Julesburg, and Rose began teaching alongside her mother at the music school. Having her daughter as a colleague brought Zara deep satisfaction, the two of them sharing ideas and supporting each other's students. Lily, the youngest, showed no interest in marriage, focused entirely on her compositions. By 20, she had pieces being performed in Denver and Colorado Springs, her talent recognized beyond their small town. Zara and Ryder supported her completely, understanding that each child needed to follow their own path. In 1908, Zara turned 52 and Ryder 55. They were slowing down physically, but their minds remained sharp, their love undiminished. Zara still taught, though fewer students now, focusing on the most advanced and dedicated. Ryder had turned most of the horse breeding over to Samuel but still worked with the animals every day, unable to imagine life without them. That fall, Mr. Thompson passed away peacefully in his sleep at 87. At the funeral, Ryder delivered the eulogy, his voice breaking as he talked about the man who had given him work when he most needed purpose, who had helped him build a life. The old rancher had been like a second father, and his loss hit hard. Mrs. Thompson followed her husband 6 months later, as sometimes happens with long married couples. At her funeral, Zara played piano, choosing pieces the old woman had loved. The Thompson children, now middle-aged themselves, sold the ranch to Samuel and Ryder together, a partnership that ensured the land stayed in hands that loved it. As Zara entered her 50s, she found herself thinking more about legacy, about what would remain when she was gone. The music school would continue, now established enough to survive without her direct involvement. Her children were settled and happy. Her grandchildren, now numbering 4 with another on the way, were being raised with music and love. But something nagged at her, a feeling that there was one more thing she needed to do. She talked to Ryder about it one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and pink. "I want to write down my story," she said. "Our story. Not for publication or fame, but for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, so they know where they came from, so they understand that love can find you even in the emptiest places if you are open to it." "That is a fine idea," Ryder said. "Should I help?" "Tell me your side," Zara suggested. "What you were thinking, feeling, those early days. I only know my own experience." So they began, spending evenings reconstructing their history. Ryder talked about seeing Zara for the first time, how her music had pierced through the numbness he had wrapped around his heart. How he had been terrified to approach her, certain he had nothing to offer someone with such talent. How her kindness had slowly taught him to hope again. Zara wrote it all down in careful script, adding her own memories, creating a testament to what they had built together. The project took months, but when finished, it was something tangible, a record of their love that could be passed down through generations. In 1910, Rose had her first child, a daughter with her mother's musical talent evident even in infancy. Samuel's family had grown to 3 children, all boys who showed their grandfather's way with animals. Lily, still unmarried at 26, had completed her first symphony, which was scheduled to premiere in Denver the following spring. Zara and Ryder attended the premiere, sitting in the elegant theater holding hands, listening to their daughter's music performed by a full orchestra. It was complex and beautiful, and Zara recognized strains of the pieces she used to play in the Saloon, transformed into something new. When the audience rose in standing ovation, both parents wept with pride. Backstage afterward, Lily embraced them both. "Thank you for never pushing me toward marriage or conventional life," she said, "for letting me be who I am." "We just wanted you to be happy," Zara said. Whatever that looked like. As Zara and Ryder moved into their 60s, they gradually stepped back from active work, letting their children take over the music school and the ranch. They spent their days quietly, tending their garden, playing with grandchildren, enjoying the peaceful rhythm of long marriage. The Steinway piano, now over 40 years old, had been repaired and restored multiple times. Its tone had mellowed, becoming richer, deeper. Zara still played daily, though her fingers were not as nimble as they once were. The music remained her constant, the language through which she processed joy and sorrow, memory and hope. In 1915, the world was embroiled in terrible war, though America had not yet entered the conflict. They read newspaper accounts with horror, grateful their children and grandchildren were safe in Colorado. The music school took on new importance during these dark times, providing beauty and comfort in an uncertain world. Samuel's oldest son, young Ryder, now 12, began showing serious musical talent, asking his grandmother for advanced lessons. Zara agreed gladly, finding deep satisfaction in teaching her grandson the same pieces her mother had taught her. The music was traveling through 4 generations now, a gift that kept giving. On their 36th anniversary in 1916, Zara and Ryder renewed their vows in a small ceremony attended by family. Rose played violin while Lily's husband, a pianist she had recently married to everyone's surprise, accompanied on the church organ. Samuel walked his mother down the aisle, and all 3 children stood with their parents during the brief ceremony. As they spoke their vows again, Zara looked into Ryder's weathered face, seeing the young cowboy he had been, the strong man he had become, and the wise elder he now was. Every stage of their journey together was visible in his eyes, in the lines time had etched around his mouth, in the silver that had overtaken his dark hair. "I love you more now than I did then," she said, departing from the written vows. "I did not know that was possible, but every year with you has been deeper, richer, more real than the last." "You are my greatest blessing," Ryder replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Every good thing in my life came from that evening when I walked into the Silverthorn and heard you play. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." They kissed as their children and grandchildren applauded, and Zara felt the presence of all those who had helped them reach this moment. Her mother, who had taught her music. Ryder's family, whose loss had brought him to the saloon that fateful night. Martha, who had given her a job. The Thompsons, who had given them land and opportunity. The community of Julesburg, which had embraced them and supported their dreams. Life was not about the grand moments, Zara had learned, but about the accumulation of ordinary days filled with love and purpose. It was about showing up, doing the work, choosing each other again and again. It was about finding beauty in unexpected places and having the courage to reach for it. The years continued their steady march. America entered the war in 1917, and Zara organized benefit concerts to support the effort. Young Ryder, now 14, performed publicly for the first time, playing with skill that reminded everyone of his grandmother. The music school expanded again, adding classes in voice and violin, becoming a true conservatory. In 1920, as Zara turned 64 and Ryder 67, they celebrated quietly with just their immediate family. Their health remained relatively good, though Ryder's joints ached from decades of physical labor, and Zara's vision was declining, making reading difficult. But they adapted, finding new ways to enjoy each day. One evening in late summer, as they sat together on their porch watching the grandchildren play in the yard, Ryder said, "I have been thinking about that night in the saloon, how empty it was, how alone we both were." "We found each other," Zara said, leaning against his shoulder. "Yes," Ryder agreed. "But I wonder how many other people are sitting alone somewhere, convinced that happiness is not possible for them. I wish we could tell them that it is never too late, that love can find you even when you have given up hoping for it." "Maybe that is what our story is for," Zara suggested. "To remind people that broken does not mean beyond repair, that grief does not have to be permanent, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is show up and listen, really listen, to another human being." They sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened, the air cooling, the first stars appearing. In the distance, they could hear piano music drifting from the house, one of the grandchildren practicing. The sound made Zara smile, this evidence that music would continue long after she was gone. Life moved forward with its mixture of joy and sorrow. Friends passed away, children grew up, grandchildren graduated and started lives of their own. Through it all, Zara and Ryder remained constants for each other, their love deepening with each passing year. In 1925, they celebrated their golden anniversary with a party that seemed to include half of northeastern Colorado. The music school held a special concert in their honor, featuring performances by 3 generations of students. Young Ryder, now 22 and a professional pianist himself, played the same Brahms piece his grandmother had been practicing that first night, his fingers bringing forth the beauty she had always heard in the composition. Standing before the crowd, Ryder gave a speech that had Zara wiping away tears. "Many people ask me how we have stayed together for 50 years, he said, his voice still strong despite his 72 years. "The answer is simple and complex all at once. We chose each other. We keep choosing each other. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, we say yes to this partnership, to this love. It has not always been easy. We have faced hardship, loss, struggle, but we have faced it together, and that has made all the difference." He turned to Zara, taking her hand. "You walked into my life when I believed joy was behind me. You taught me that grief and happiness could coexist, that I could honor what I had lost while still embracing what I had found. You gave me children and grandchildren, a legacy of love that will extend far beyond our years. You gave me music, not just to hear but to live. I would not change a single moment of these 50 years." Zara stood, and they embraced as everyone applauded. She whispered in his ear, "The best decision I ever made was staying in Julesburg. The best gift I ever received was you, sitting in that corner table, listening." The party continued late into the evening, with music and dancing and storytelling. As midnight approached, Zara found herself at the piano one last time, playing softly while people talked and laughed around her. She played from memory, her fingers finding the keys more by feel than sight now, and she thought about how this instrument had been the thread connecting all the chapters of her adult life. It had sat in an empty saloon, a beautiful thing unused. It had filled her home with music as her children grew. It had taught generations of students. It had been the bridge between her past and present, between loss and love, between loneliness and belonging. It was just wood and wire and ivory, but it had become sacred through use, through the emotions poured into it over decades. As Zara grew older, she played less frequently, her arthritis making long sessions at the piano painful. But she still taught, sitting beside students and guiding them through difficult passages, her ears as sharp as ever even if her fingers would not always obey. Rose had taken over most of the administrative work at the music school, but Zara remained its heart, the founder whose vision had created something lasting. In 1928, Ryder's health began to decline. A lifetime of hard physical work had taken its toll on his body, and he moved more slowly, tired more easily. He remained mentally sharp and emotionally present, but Zara could see the weariness settling into his bones. They spent more time sitting together, less time active, content with simple proximity. One afternoon in early spring, as they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets against the lingering chill, Ryder said, "I am not afraid of dying, but I hate the thought of leaving you alone." "Do not talk like that," Zara said, though her voice lacked conviction. She had been having the same thoughts. "We should talk about it," Ryder insisted gently. "We are both old, Zara. We have been blessed with long lives and good health, but that cannot last forever. I need you to know that if I go first, you will be all right. You are strong. You are surrounded by people who love you. You will grieve, but you will survive." "I do not want to survive without you," Zara said, tears slipping down her weathered cheeks. "I know," Ryder said, taking her hand. "But you will, for our children and grandchildren, for your students, for the music that still needs to be shared. Promise me you will keep living, keep teaching, keep playing, even if I am not here to listen." "I promise," Zara whispered, "but you have to promise me the same. If I go first, you do not just give up, you keep going. You spend time with our family. You remember that we had 50 wonderful years, and that is a gift many people never receive." "I promise," Ryder said. They sat together as the sun set, holding hands, storing up this moment against the inevitable changes to come. Ryder rallied that summer, seeming stronger, more energetic. They took gentle walks together, tended the garden, visited with grandchildren. For a while, Zara let herself hope that they might have several more years together. But in October, Ryder caught a cold that settled into his lungs. Despite the doctor's best efforts, pneumonia developed. He was confined to bed, struggling to breathe, his strong body finally failing. Zara rarely left his side, sleeping in a chair by the bed, helping him with sips of water and spoonfuls of broth. Their children came and went, all of them understanding that time was short. Samuel brought his grandchildren to say goodbye. Rose played violin softly in the next room. Lily read him her latest compositions, describing the music she heard in her head. On a clear November morning, with Zara holding his hand and sunlight streaming through the window, Ryder opened his eyes one last time. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible, "for everything, for the music, for the love, for choosing me." "Thank you for sitting alone in that saloon," Zara replied, tears streaming down her face, "for listening, for seeing me, for loving me so well." "Not goodbye," Ryder whispered, "just until later." His eyes closed, and a few moments later his breathing stopped. Zara sat holding his hand for a long time, feeling the warmth slowly fade, knowing that a chapter of her life had ended. 50 years of partnership, of love, of building something beautiful together. It was over, and she was alone. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Ryder had touched. Ranchers and businessmen, fellow church members, neighbors and friends. All of their children spoke, sharing memories of a father who had been gentle and strong, patient and wise. Samuel talked about working alongside his father, learning not just about horses but about integrity. Rose described his quiet support of her unconventional dreams. Lily thanked him for teaching her that love was shown through action, through daily choice. Zara could not speak at the service. Her grief was too raw, too overwhelming. But she played piano, choosing a piece by Schubert that Ryder had particularly loved. Her fingers shook, and tears blurred her vision, but she made it through, pouring every ounce of her love and loss into the music. After the funeral, the house felt impossibly empty. Even with children and grandchildren visiting constantly, Zara felt Ryder's absence like a physical wound. She would turn to share a thought with him before remembering he was gone. She would reach for his hand in the night and find only empty space. Rose moved back home temporarily, worried about leaving her mother alone. But after a few weeks, Zara gently insisted she return to her own family. "I need to learn to live with this," she said. "You cannot protect me from grief. I have to walk through it myself." She found solace in routine, teaching her students, playing piano daily, working in the garden. She wrote letters to her grandchildren, sharing memories of their grandfather, ensuring his stories would not be lost. She visited his grave every few days, sitting beside the headstone and talking to him about everything that was happening. Slowly, painfully, she learned to exist in this new reality. The sharp edge of grief dulled into a persistent ache, present but no longer debilitating. She found she could smile again, laugh at her grandchildren's antics, enjoy the small pleasures of daily life. The sadness remained, but it no longer consumed everything. One evening, about 6 months after Ryder's death, Zara sat at the piano and found herself playing the pieces from that first night in the Silverthorne Saloon. She played them all, a concert for an audience of one, and she could almost feel Ryder's presence, could almost see him sitting in that corner table, listening with his eyes closed. When she finished, she said aloud, "I am still here, still playing, still teaching, still loving our family. You can rest easy. I am keeping my promise." The years after Ryder's death were quieter but still rich. Zara continued teaching until she was nearly 80, finally retiring when her arthritis made piano playing too painful. The music school thrived under Rose's leadership, now teaching over 100 students and employing 6 teachers. Young Ryder, now married with children of his own, became a renowned pianist, performing across the country. He always credited his grandmother as his first and most important teacher. Whenever he performed, he would mention her in interviews, telling the story of how she had played piano in a dusty saloon, keeping music alive in a small frontier town. Zara's other grandchildren pursued various paths, but all maintained a connection to music, whether professionally or as dedicated amateurs. She had given them a gift that enriched their lives in countless ways, exactly as she had hoped. In 1935, at age 79, Zara moved in with Samuel and his wife, her body too frail to manage alone anymore. She had a comfortable room with a view of the prairie, and they moved her beloved Steinway piano to the house so she could still play when her hands allowed. She spent her days reading, visiting with family, and telling stories about the old days. Young people from the music school would come to interview her, preserving her memories for posterity. She talked about arriving in Julesburg with nothing, about the empty saloon, about the cowboy who had changed everything. "Love finds you when you least expect it," she would say. "I thought I was done with happiness, that grief was all I had left, but Ryder showed me different. He taught me that even broken people can create something whole together. That is the gift we gave each other, and it is the gift I hope you all find someday." On a warm summer evening in 1938, surrounded by 3 generations of family, Zara Sullivan Morrison played piano one last time. Her fingers were stiff and clumsy, but she managed a simple melody, one she had composed herself years ago. It was called "The Empty Saloon," and it told the story of loneliness transforming into love, of music bridging the space between 2 wounded hearts. When she finished, her great-grandchildren applauded and she smiled, feeling complete. She had lived a full life, had loved deeply and been loved in return. She had shared her music with hundreds of students, had helped build a community where beauty and culture thrived even on the harsh frontier. She had raised children who honored her values and grandchildren who would carry them forward. That night, Zara passed away peacefully in her sleep, just 2 months shy of her 82nd birthday. She was buried beside Ryder, their headstones marking the resting place of two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary from their shared brokenness. At her funeral, the entire music school performed, along with professional musicians who had studied with her, including her grandson. They played classical pieces and folk songs, hymns and original compositions, filling the church with the sound she had loved most. It was not a sad funeral, but a celebration of a life well lived, a legacy that would continue through everyone she had touched. Rose, now 60 years old herself, gave the eulogy. "My mother used to say that she played piano in an empty saloon, and my father sat alone just to hear her music. From that simple beginning, they built a love that inspired everyone who knew them. They taught us that the most profound connections come from truly listening to another person, from seeing their pain and beauty and choosing to stay. They showed us that art and love are not luxuries but necessities, things that make life worth living even when it is hard. That is the gift they gave us, and it is the gift we must pass forward." The story of Zara and Ryder Morrison became part of Julesburg's history, told and retold as the years passed. The music school they had helped build continued to thrive, eventually becoming a renowned conservatory that drew students from across the country. The ranch they had established remained in family hands for generations, a testament to their hard work and vision. Their descendants spread across Colorado and beyond, but most maintained connections to Julesburg, returning for holidays and reunions. They gathered at the family cemetery, where Zara and Ryder rested side by side, and told stories about the piano player and the cowboy, about love found in unlikely places, about music echoing through empty spaces until it filled them with meaning. The Steinway piano, carefully maintained and restored over the decades, eventually found a permanent home in the Julesburg Music Conservatory, displayed in the entrance hall with a plaque explaining its history. Students would touch its keys reverently, connecting across time with the woman who had played it in a dusty saloon, the cowboy who had listened, and the love story that had changed a town. Years became decades, and decades became a century, but the essential truth remained. Two lonely people had found each other through music, had chosen love over despair, had built something lasting from grief and hope. They had shown everyone around them that it was never too late for happiness, that brokenness could be transformed, that beauty persisted even in the harshest environments if someone was brave enough to create it. In the end, their story was not about grand gestures or dramatic moments, though those had happened too. It was about showing up consistently, choosing each other daily, building a life one note, one conversation, one shared sunset at a time. It was about the power of being truly seen, truly heard by another human being. It was about music not as entertainment, but as connection, as language, as the bridge between what was and what could be. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the last light faded from the Colorado sky, people claimed they could still hear piano music drifting through Julesburg, echoing from the place where the old Silverthorne Saloon had stood. It was probably just imagination, just wishful thinking, but it felt true enough. Some stories, some loves, some music, they reasoned, were too powerful to ever truly end. They persisted, woven into the very fabric of a place, reminding everyone who listened that love could find you in the most unexpected places, if you were brave enough to sit alone in an empty room and truly listen. The Morrison family continued to grow and flourish, each generation adding their own verses to the song that Zara and Ryder had begun. Some became musicians, others ranchers, teachers, doctors, artists. But all carried within them the understanding that love was a choice, daily and deliberate, that grief did not disqualify you from joy, and that sometimes the most important thing you could do was show up and listen to another person's music, whatever form that music took. This was the legacy of the piano player and the cowboy, the gift they had given not just to their descendants, but to everyone whose life they had touched. It was a reminder that even in the dusty, difficult landscape of the Old West, even in the empty spaces of a frontier saloon, beauty and love and meaning could bloom if someone was brave enough to play, and someone else was brave enough to listen. And so the story ended where it had begun, with music and solitude transforming into connection and love, with two people finding each other against all odds and creating something that would echo through generations. It was a simple story, really, but like all true love stories, it contained entire worlds within its simple framework, and its music played on long after the final note had been struck, carried forward by everyone who believed that love, like music, never truly dies. It simply changes form, transforming from melody into memory, from sound into story, from two hearts into many, spreading outward in ripples that never quite reach their end.